Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Be the Standard. I'm your host, Denny Paul, and as usual, here with my best friend and co-host, Mike Burns. Before we get started, go ahead, like, subscribe to the podcast. You'll find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble. Uh, Always appreciate your support. Check out our Instagram pages as well. Be the Standard Podcast for the business. Denny underscore Paul 12 is my personal page, and Mike Burns 1
One.
is his personal page. Also, don't forget to check us out on LinkedIn as well. We are there. Be the Standard Podcast. And yeah, I'm just gonna get right into it because we've talked about a few things to date now. We talked about mindset. We talked about what it means to actually be the standard. But I think today is actually going to be our mm, most serious topic.
Yeah.
Something I think that definitely hits home for each of us. Something just being a part of the veteran community. We're going to be talking about PTSD and mental health. Um, So yeah, again, that's just something that hits home for both of us, and something that we can certainly speak to, right?
I I think we're qualified to speak to this.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to be putting any science behind it, any
No.
psychology, or we certainly don't have any education to back this up. But what we do have, unfortunately, is the experience to speak to it. So, uh, you know, we'll get into that and talk about again just PTSD, mental health, and I think most of you know by now what PTSD is, but in case you don't, it's essentially a disorder where people have a difficult time recovering after either experiencing or witnessing a traumatic event. And so typically PTSD will last anywhere from it can be months, it could be years, it can be forever, unfortunately. And again, in our community, we've seen you know it lasts a lifetime for some people,
Yeah.
and
So
yeah,
people battle the fight every day.
yeah. And I think the ultimate goal as veterans, right, is for us to get past this or over that hump of, I don't know if it's still 22 a day, but for a
Yeah.
long time, that was the number. And, I think ultimately, anybody who's kind of out there doing what we're doing and kind of, you know, creating a voice and
Yeah.
creating a platform, I think, ultimately our goal is to do our best to just address this issue. And I know as we grow, we're going to be loud on this issue. And that's definitely something you can expect from us. So if you're a veteran out there struggling, just know that there's already so many resources, but we're certainly going to be one as well moving forward.
Absolutely. And the big goal is in all mental health and PTSD, is really removing the stigma from it, right? And a lot of people, we're from macho cultures in the military, the fire department, police department, whatever you're in. And people find it weak to even talk about this stuff. So I think it's important we discuss this topic today and really put it out there, shine the light, and let everyone know hey, this is what it is, and this is okay to talk about. So
Yeah, and I think you touched upon it in the perfect way, that in the form of a stigma, right?
oh,
And
big time.
coming from not just the military, but the infantry, uh, where at least when I served, it was only men and very
Well, it's a
much
little
just
different now, Dan.
yeah. That's what I hear. I heard it's different, and
Hmm.
hey, whatever. I'm not going to speak to that. However, when I served, it was just guys and alpha males everywhere. That's you have to be alpha, I think, pretty much to do that job. Not that everyone is, but but just speaking to the stigma aspect of it, I think that people make the mistake of just assuming we're broken. And I want to make the
Hmm.
point to veterans out there that you're not broken. You just need help. And um, asking for that help, and I had to learn this the hard way myself after coming home, is it's a sign of strength
Yeah.
to be like, help me, to be like, I need somebody to help me back to get back to where I was.
Right. And like you nailed it earlier, Dan, saying like broken. Like you're not broken. Nobody's broken. Right. And it's because you can't quantify it. You can't see it. Just like if you had like a broken bone or if you had like a sprain or something like that, people can see that. They can measure that. And this, they just don't know. So they treat it differently and they people kind of shun it. And we want to get to the left before it becomes an issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
In mental health in general, but definitely PTSD is can be triggered by certain events, but really get to the left before it gets to the point where you really need some serious intervention, right? So if we
Right.
get rid of the stigma like I talked about, and make it just part of normal culture to be able to heal before it becomes a scar.
Hmm.
That makes sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
And you just spoke to, something that's just a key word, like, right, like a punch word or whatever, punchline, whatever you want to call it, but the triggers of
hmm
it. You're the only person I think I've ever really discussed, PTSD with, and kind of even admitted, really. I've admitted to some people that I've struggled with it, but I think I've only talked in depth with it with you.
yeah,
And when it comes to triggers, for me personally, it's I don't really have a lot of triggers with it. It's either just invasive thoughts, things that I think about that happened, things that I think about that could have happened that didn't happen, things like that. But for me, it's noises don't really do it. Uh, Noises don't really do it. Unless it's something very distinct. There is like very distinct noises that will do it. But even if it's that distinct noise and I know it's coming, I'm
yeah,
fine. It doesn't bother me.
yep,
You can sit there and fireworks, all that stuff. If I know it's coming and I know it's there, then it doesn't bother me at all.
yeah. Yeah, I can talk to that a little bit. Just so like you said, some effects are temporary. So after Iraq, for sure, I had some temporary effects
Mm-hmm.
that didn't stay. Like, would hear the C ramp sirens while I was in the shower because in Iraq, like especially people that we deployed with, they know like we were getting bombarded pretty bad, and if you were in the shower, you couldn't hear them walking the rounds in, and
Sure.
so what I mean, you were always listening for that. But
Mm-hmm.
that went away. That didn't last. I think maybe a couple months, but
Sure.
yeah. But so like you said, you have your temporary ones. Some things never go away, and
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think coming off deployment, I think the high stress environment. And I don't know if you label this PTSD. I don't think you do. I think it's just a high stress coming off a high stress um, deployment, and then you coming back to regular life here. It's hard. You know what I mean? Because you're used to everything being a certain way, and you lash out a lot.
Oh,
A
big,
lot.
yeah, yeah, big time. And I think I'm glad you brought that up because the first 6 months after deployment is when I struggled the most.
Yeah, of course.
And I mean, I'm not even exaggerating when I tell you that I think I drank every day
Wow.
for 6, 8 months. Like I'd literally be in the kitchen like with a bottle of Patron in the freezer and sneaking shots from my wife at the time.
Wow.
Like just because like that, I felt like it was just constantly thinking about things that I didn't want to think about, and then just like you said, coming off that high stress environment and that readjustment period. Like I think a lot of it in the beginning gets misconstrued as PTSD when it really is just
Yep.
such a difficult time to readjust. And at the time, like for probably a year and a half, 2 years, I thought that's all it was. I
Yeah.
thought I was just like, I
Yeah.
just thought I still just wasn't adjusting. I just thought like that was my struggle, right? Just adjusting. And then I got to the point where I was like, well, maybe I should go talk to someone. So I went to the vet center and she was like, you have PTSD.
Yeah.
I needed to be told that I had PTSD, but I knew because of like the state of my marriage at the time and just not even just my marriage, but relationships with other people. Like I knew that something was wrong and that like in my ex-wife, to her credit, you have to talk to someone.
Yeah.
So I did.
Yeah. So, and one thing I wanted to bring up because obviously we deployed together, and I think even through veterans, though, maybe initially, maybe they don't feel this way anymore, but I feel like some veterans might judge what people perceive and what happens to them. So I do want to make it clear out there to everybody listening that you could have two people experience the exact same event, and one person it affects them differently. That's
Oh
not
yeah.
because they're weak. That has
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with it. It's just the way the brain perceived it and how it lasts. Again, I don't know the science behind it, so I'm not going to try to do that. But I've been in so many circumstances, and you as well, then that through the two deployments that you could have the exact same experience, and somebody can have experience it completely differently, and you're in your mind like, oh, we're fine. Like we did the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. The same thing happened to us, and I didn't realize till later, till probably after the Afghanistan deployment, that wow, like you really gotta. you can't judge. We don't know,
No.
but people do, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'm glad to bring that point up. I think about I think back to just being in a firefight.
Yeah.
Even at the time, and I'm not trying to sound a certain way or anything, but even at the time, that wasn't for me. That wasn't that scary.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, I think oh shit, rounds are coming in, they're close,
Yeah.
right? But after that, and you realize that you can still function when that happens, you just do your job and kind of fall back on your training.
Right.
But as we saw overseas, there were guys that clammed up in that situation and couldn't perform. They couldn't even just simply do their job. And like you said, you don't judge that, but
Would never, yeah.
those experiences, it's very, very different for everybody, and um yeah, you can't judge, and you can't predict
Never.
you can't predict how you would be in that scenario either until it happens.
Yep.
It is a high stress situation, and I don't think it gets more stressful than that, right? Because not only are you thinking about yourself, you're thinking about the people around you, people you love and care about, and you're all going through it together.
Yeah.
But not everybody functions the same.
Yeah, and not everyone's going to take that experience the same either.
Yeah.
And some people might come back and get over it in a month, 2 months. Some people have probably never gotten over it. The same exact stuff we would go through, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I could be sitting here between you and I, who knows? But yeah, I mean, and that's probably the biggest thing I really want to shed light on with that is that I learned probably after Afghanistan, right? I don't think when you're in it, you don't really think about it, and you're like, you're kind of going through it, but then you see, even after the Iraq deployment, that was just 2 years before that. It's like you see what it does to certain people, long lasting, and you're like, I was the same. I was in the same situation this person was, and you don't realize why it affected them differently.
Yep.
So I would just put it out there to any veterans listening out there to know and be empathetic if you were around somebody who experienced the same thing you did and they took it differently. Don't think they're making it up. Don't think they're lying. Don't pass judgment. Right. We're not ones to judge. We don't know what that did to that person. We don't know what's continued to do to that person. So I would just really put that out there and just really think about that before we pass judgment.
Yeah, and I kind of and I think that's why it was so difficult for me initially to be like, yeah, I'm gonna go talk to somebody, because I would think to myself, well, yeah, you saw some shit, but you didn't see as much as this person.
Yeah.
You didn't do, I mentioned John Doolittle, our buddy. I think at the time we deployed with him, that was like his 12th deployment.
All those
or his 9th deployment. So it's I start thinking to myself, like, hey, I was deployed overseas. We're working with Navy SEALs, right? Mm-hmm. These guys are on 8, 9, 10, 11, however many deployments. And then you start to think to yourself, like, well, if they've done that, and I haven't deployed that often, I haven't seen what they've seen. Yep. So I shouldn't feel the way I do. But it doesn't take a lot.
Yeah.
It doesn't take it. I mean, take away the military context for a second, right? You can get into one car accident and see some things or experience some things that just impact you forever.
Yeah.
So, like you said earlier, it just goes back to each individual internalizes things and processes things just completely different.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it before. Like, everyone's always going to have a bigger whatever than you did, right?
Always.
And we can't compare. We can't look at it that way. We can't be like, oh, this person did this in anything we do in life, because there's going to be someone who had it worse and did it more, did it better, or whatever. So stop doing that. I would say that to anybody listening. Stop comparing your experience to someone else and be like, oh, they're just fine. For one, you don't know if they're just fine. A lot of people, they wear the face well, when it comes to that. So, and also, like, first responders. I mean, I'm a firefighter, been a firefighter for 15 years. I've seen way more people die than I've ever seen overseas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, you just don't know. Like, you could be in any situation. Like you just said, you could just be in a car accident. Like you said, that's probably a great example, because that's a jarring event. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's something that you weren't expecting that can just leave that everlasting scar on you.
In a second.
Right? Just like that.
And, in those types of situations too, and like I said earlier, it wasn't the firefights for me. It's maybe distinct noises here and there. But the thing that, for me, that was the hardest, and you've just mentioned it as a firefighter, seeing all those people killed, like more people killed than you ever saw overseas. You think you're going to react a certain way and feel a certain way when something happens. But, when I was overseas, I remember walking out of the aid station after getting my I got my third or my fourth cortisone shot in my shoulder,
Hmm.
and I was walking out, and these two vehicles come barreling in, and they're like, "Hey, we got some bodies. You need to help us move them. This truck just got blown up, whatever." So I go to pick up a guy by his legs. His legs come up, but the rest of them didn't. And I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
And then I wasn't really processing it at the time, but then I looked down, space is gone too. So like
that's a lot
it's
then.
it's
Yeah,
just not natural to see
of
that.
course not.
And so that's the type of stuff that kind of got me. And if it ever does now, that's the stuff that still does.
Right,
It's not the combat stuff
right,
for me.
right.
It's those unnatural, death is so
Right.
unnatural to
See,
see.
well, we're so used to seeing the human body in a certain way, and when you
Mm.
don't see it that way anymore, it's like, whoa, it's kind of bizarre. It's weird, and the mind doesn't know how to process it, and especially in a high stress situation like that. Couple
Mm.
those two things together, it's a
Yeah,
recipe for disaster, for
absolutely.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And like I think people too, like when it comes to PTSD, and again, not just the military context, it's just the effect that it has on your daily life.
Oh yeah.
It's if you're dealing with it and you're having just those particular feelings in that particular moment, it can shut you down in a second.
Yeah.
Or it can give you, or it can make you um, triggered and act a certain way in a second. Like
Yep.
it's just the effect that it can have on you just every single day if not managed and treated.
Right. And then
So
like you just nailed it there. That's why I wanted to kind of bring up managing treated. Obviously, you need to see professional. Professional help is,
mm,
and I use this context. I gave this speech to Memorial Day at the in Framingham a while back, but it was like if you hurt anything else in your body, right?
mm,
You broke your leg, you wouldn't wait to get treatment. You would go to
yeah,
the hospital, get cast, and you would
yep,
get better. Unfortunately, with any kind of trauma, people like, oh no, like exactly for all the reasons we talked about, they don't get help. And then that trauma festers and scars.
yeah,
And then by the time it really manifests, like, and then it's really, really hard to fix it because it's gone so far and gone so long. That'd be the same thing with the broken leg. If I never did anything with it, didn't get a cast or nothing, and I tried to walk around on it, it's like, that people like, that's crazy. Why would you
yeah,
do that? I want to get to the point that our society, our culture should get to the point, or I guess, our professions, or what we do, the macho culture needs to get to the point where it's okay. They realize it's okay
hmm,
to take care of it before it gets that bad. You know what I mean? Because that's always what the problem is, and it's so hard. And not saying it's impossible. You guys all know this. We got a lot of veterans out there who fought the good fight and won. You know what I mean? But it's so hard when it gets so far. You know
yep,
what I mean? We want to get to the left of that and recognize it
yeah.
and take care of it. Go get some help. Like that's what it's there for. Like, and it's gonna make you better in everyday life that you do. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting about that, just doing what you need to get help and treatment is, for me, it started while we were overseas. I started taking trazodone to sleep
No, no.
overseas.
Well,
And I didn't stop taking trazodone to sleep until 10 months ago.
well,
So I took it for 13 years, almost 12, 13 years. But like when we were overseas with that one Wagas firefight, that engagement sporadically was like 3 hours, 4 hours. And I remember getting back that night and I was like, I couldn't sleep I don't think I slept for like a day and a half.
really.
And I went to one of the doctors. I was like, I haven't slept, man. I know I need to sleep because I'm just like a zombie right now.
Yeah.
So they gave me trazodone, and I sent me home with trazodone. I had trazodone again. I took it until like 10 months ago, so
Yeah. And
over a
so
decade.
so I'm glad you brought that up because so let's go back in hindsight on that, right?
It's great not needing it now, though. By the way, but keep going.
No, no. Well, let's address things I've learned, later, right? And I've said this about another situation that we're in over there, and I didn't realize I could have done a better job as a leader after things like that. Really, like talking to the guys. Like
Mm,
we always ask at our debrief, "You guys good? We good?" Like everyone's like, "Yeah, Roger that. We're good." But really talk to the guys. You know what I mean? Really, like I think that would help. Maybe not. I don't know. But I feel like you look back and you're like, man, like just like I had no idea,
hmm,
until we just talked, like, for you guys listening, I had no idea, Denny, that happened. Like that was the result you had from that day, and other events that
mm,
I've been through. And I'm just like, man, like I should really been more empathetic after the fact. Obviously, once you're in something, you're in it. But after when it's all done, it's all calmed down.
yeah,
Maybe been a little more tentative, not empathetic, obviously for sure, but more tentative to the situation to make sure that people really are good.
Yeah, but I think to not catch that while we're there is
Probably tough.
understandable
Yeah,
because you're so focused on
yeah,
setting all those feelings aside.
yeah.
If I didn't have issues sleeping, I mean,
Mm,
nobody would have known anything. It's just because I couldn't sleep.
gotcha.
Um,
Yeah,
I otherwise wouldn't have said anything. It would just been,
but
look, like we
but
have a
we
job to do.
but
That's what we have to do, and these other feelings have to go away for a while.
but we played the what if game. Well, I agree. When you're in the moment,
Right,
those have
and
to go
that's kind
away
of
for
what
a
I
while.
mean.
But afterwards, it's kind of like, and again, this might be something we'll delve into later. And I really, maybe it's got me thinking now, like in those situations afterwards. I mean, like if there is a way to mitigate it before it kind of does something. But you
Yeah.
know, again, I'm just talking, like really just kind of popped in my head about that because
Mhm.
you don't really think about it. Everyone gives a Roger that we're good,
Mhm.
and I've never had anyone come up to me afterwards and say anything. But you find out later, maybe
Right.
months or after the deployment's over, you're like, oh wow, man, I'm sorry, like that you felt that way, and let's talk about it.
I think it's more typical for because I've had conversations with a couple of my guys that I was in charge of overseas since that struggled when they got home.
Mm.
I didn't have a clue what was going on there, and for all I know, well, I don't even know if they had issues when they were there, but I know afterwards getting home they did, and we were able to talk about it, so that was good. But it would have been nice to know if they did have those feelings there.
And maybe they didn't
It
recognize him back then.
Well, and that's the thing, and
Yeah,
that's what I'm getting at when I say like when you're there, those feelings you just push them away
yeah,
because you know that you still have however many months
yep.
left, and there's still so much work to do.
That's a good point.
So it's like you don't even know what you're feeling
Yeah.
in the moment because you're just there,
Hmm.
and there's already and this is what people need to understand. It's like when you're deployed, I think that take combat and any of that type of stress out of it. There's already enough stress.
Yeah.
There's already so many stresses already that are just having such an impact on you, whether it's personally or just the work that you're doing outside of just the danger of it. Like it's just a
Yeah,
stressful
stressful
environment.
environment, and that's one thing I want. I'm glad you brought that up because it is important to note because some of the deployments that were non-combat related too. It's just is the stress of obviously you're leaving your family, you're going over there, but the way way a deployment is structured, it's everything has to be a certain way, and it will be, especially in a combat environment. Even if they didn't experience combat, like things are done a certain way because it saves lives, right? You come back and it's no longer that way, and it really makes you mad when things aren't that way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I know from both my deployments, definitely my first one, but definitely my first combat one, my second combat one, I wasn't as bad, I don't think. But maybe we'll ask the ex-wife if I was. Uh, but you know, just having things having to be a certain way, and you have control over that, and coming back, and then things don't fall into that, and you kind of, I guess, overreact emotionally, right? So.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know. I have to kind of bring this up. I was watching a video online the other day. Andrew Tate, who he is, the bald,
Mm-hmm.
fucking loud guy or whatever. And he had some video up, and he was like, "Depression's not real.
Mm.
Like that's not real. It's all made up." And
Yeah.
I mean, if I could have jumped on the screen and fucking punched him in the face, I would have.
Yeah.
Like, and I do want to touch about this on this rather, just kind of as like an awareness thing. But we lost a good friend of ours to suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Jimmy.
Well, that's a bunch.
Yeah, I mean we've lost.
Yeah.
I mean at least half a dozen that I could probably name right now.
Yeah.
But one that was special to us.
Yeah.
Um, and when I saw that video when he said that stuff's not real, I got so pissed.
Yeah.
And then I initially or immediately I should say thought of him because that's the one that always hits me the hardest.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up because I think our mission with this podcast too is there's so much noise out there. We talked about this in maybe in episode 1 or episode 2. People just ranting about things they know nothing about. You and I will never talk about that. We will talk about what we know and how we see it, and that is it. And we would never put such a blunt, stupid statement out there that depression is not real. I mean, and I feel bad for people that are experiencing that because they might have looked up to that guy and heard him say that, like, "Oh, just suck it up and change your mindset, and your
What's
depression
worse
will
is
go
that
away."
people might actually buy into that bullshit.
People do.
That's worse.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I mean to let somebody convince you that like that's not real.
No.
I'm just, that made me so mad.
Yeah.
It really did. So to hear that, and like I said, Jimmy's the first guy I thought of, and so Jimmy's a guy that we served with, just so these guys know, because he's such a good guy, and I just want to, if I can say something nice about him, I'd like to. He's just
Please, yeah.
such a good guy, such a good friend. Had a daughter, and he was actually our tattoo guy. He
Yeah.
did your tattoo.
All of my
He did
tattoos.
all of
Yeah.
this and all of this. He was supposed to finish for me, but unfortunately, obviously that didn't happen. But um, yeah, just somebody that we loved, and this stuff's real, and don't ever think that it isn't. And um, yeah, I'll let you go.
Yeah, no, just to touch on Jimmy a little bit, like, yeah, I had him for both my Iraq deployment and Afghanistan deployment. Good dude, and things, and that is absolutely real. And for anyone to say it's not, they're crazy. And obviously, all the veterans out there, or even anybody out
Anybody,
there, like first responders, or even just people
anybody.
that have had something happen to them. That stuff is absolutely real, especially
Mhm.
in the climate we've been in right now, coming out of COVID. I mean, let's be real. There's a lot of people that are depressed, and there's a lot of emotional health
Yeah.
issues going on because we came in such a. Want to talk about traumatic? Life as we knew it stopped and completely changed for a while. And some people lost loved ones because they couldn't go
Mhm.
see them. They couldn't go see them, and do and process things the right
That's
way.
crazy.
It's
Yeah.
unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
And now we're coming out of that into this hyper social media environment where it seems like the world's ending. So couple those things together, it's like a time bomb. So mental health. That's why I'm glad we're talking about this today,
Yeah.
because everybody out there is probably experiencing to on some part of the spectrum. You
Yeah.
know, and it's important to know and recognize it, and to try to mitigate it. Like you said, if you need help, go get help. But
Yeah.
you can also mitigate it by trying to do healthier habits, trying to do healthier things. It does
Mhm.
not cure it. Don't listen to what
No.
these guys are saying, like the guy you were talking about, right? It's like, but these things will help mitigate and help you get a little better. But if you need help, you need to get help. Do not
Mhm.
wait, or just your circle of friends. Like you and I talked. We try to get everyone else to talk, and any veterans living out there, anyone we serve with, anyone I haven't served
Mhm.
with, like we will always talk about this anytime. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's funny. Is like I just want to make sure that obviously we want to touch the veteran community and hit that hard. But it's not just the veteran community either. It's anybody. So, um, I remember I was talking to my VA counselor, and just he, going through just my life story, and he thinks PTSD for me is equally as impactful or as the military, like and he I, I shared this quote with somebody else recently, and he said to me, he goes, Danny, you're a warrior. He goes, you kind of have been your whole life. And
Yeah, I've gone through a lot, bro.
but he was like, it's time to take the armor off. And I like have goosebumps just saying it, because when he said that to me, I was like, holy shit. Like I've never had any, I just never processed it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of made me think that he's kind of right. Like there's nobody left to fight. It's just um, getting right with yourself, and that's what so much of this podcast is about.
Yeah,
Just getting right with yourself, and just recognizing where you can be better and being better. Um, but I think this was a good talk. I think that we touched upon a lot in regards to PTSD, mental health, from a veterans' perspective, from anybody's perspective. I just kind of want to end with saying that anyone out there who, if you're having a bad day, and you feel like you want to give up, don't. Um, like I've explained to Mike before, he knows this about me. I've wanted to just be done with it, but I I didn't. I'm here, and I can tell you that I know the feeling, and I know what you're going through, and just don't do it. You
yeah,
can literally DM me personally. Please do.
yeah,
Reach out to me personally, and I'll do anything I can to help you find the resources you need.
absolutely.
And to that end, um, I'm gonna give you the suicide and life crisis hotline. Right, just pick up the phone and dial 988. If you're a veteran, press one. Um, there's options for that. There's an option for the veterans that will send you directly to a VA counselor. with no wait, I believe. Or you can text 838-255. But just know that there's resources available. And um, if you need anything from me or Mike, reach out to us directly. And
Always.
yeah, like we'll do what we can to help. That this is very, very important to us. And yeah, thank God we're filming another episode after this, because I can't end like this. I can't. We can't finish the night like this.
No, but it's important, and and not to keep it. I know it's been a very somber episode, but it's very important, and I know, we don't want to make light of it. We don't want to make jokes of it. We don't want to throw, because that's what people do. Look, first responders know this better than anybody. Like, we joke about the things we see. That's how we cope with it at the kitchen table. But then that stuff festers later. So we didn't want to do anything like that today. We wanted to keep it a real talk. Like, we didn't mean to make it somber. We apologize, but it's
just a real topic. I mean, it is what it is. Like, the content it's real, and the topic is real, and we had to talk about something serious eventually.
Yeah.
And this is just something that's important to us, and we have an obligation. If we're gonna do this, we have an obligation to speak to it as veterans, I think.
Can I just say something? I appreciate you being so open, man. I learned. I've known this guy for a long time. We've had a lot of talks, and I learned a lot about him for the first time, and just what he talked about today. So I really appreciate that, Dan, being so open to the audience.
Yeah, it's not easy either. I'll say that. But when I decided to do this, I decided that if I was going to do it, I was going to do it with an open heart.
Awesome.
And, just put it all out there.
Love it, man. You're the man.
Yeah, that was kind of. I made that decision when we decided to go at this together. So that's the idea. But yeah, I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Obviously, a more serious topic today. But go ahead, like, subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble. Go ahead and check us out on Instagram as well. Be the Standard Podcast. Denny_Paul12 is my personal page, and Mike Burns 1. Also, check us out on LinkedIn at Be the Standard Podcast. We will be posting content there, or we do post content there. But yeah, look forward to moving on to episode 6.
Episode 6,
and filming that right now. But yeah, thanks again, guys. Really appreciate all of your engagement with us and your support. We definitely notice it, and it's been just awesome. So thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
See you guys.